Okay, this morning we're going to talk with 4 members of the Ruoho family. Sharon, Jim, Donnie, and on Facebook, we've got, or is it Facebook?
Yeah,
Online is Arnold from Wisconsin. So maybe we'll start with you, Sharon. Just introduce yourself and maybe members of your family so that we get the connections.
Okay, I'm Sharon Ruoho, and I'm the eldest daughter of Arvo and Ayla Ruoho, born in 1946 in Thunder Bay. And my brother is Don, my sister is Elaine. I grew up here, lived here, and went to school here, did my high school in Red Rock, at Nip Rock High. And then I went to Toronto in 1965 to do my nursing training. Met an Englishman and got married and went to England for 35 years. But I came back to Canada every summer with my 2 sons, Ian and Jason, and we spent 6 weeks at least at Polly Lake in the summertime.
Okay, Jim?
I'm James Ruoho, the oldest son of Agnes and Olavi Ruoho. And I was born in 1944, again in General Hospital in Port Arthur. I've did all my schooling in Nipigon, and then in Red Rock, and then I went to Grand Forks, to University of North Dakota, just for a short time, and then I finished off and went to LU and got my degree there. I've lived since 1967 in Thunder Bay. Actually, Port Arthur first, and then Thunder Bay. I was married in 1973. My wife just passed away 2 years ago. So, I've got 2 children, and I have a brother, Larry, who is living in Brantford. I have a sister, Wendy Ronaldson, who lives here in Nipigon. And that's about the way my life has gone.
Okay, Donnie?
Yeah, I'm Donald Ruoho, born in Nipigon in 1950. One of the first babies in the new hospital that is not here anymore. Went to school to grade 13 in Red Rock, went to college in Ottawa for 3 years, and came back to Nipigon and got a job in the paper mill and stayed in Nipigon. Raised 2 kids here. Jamie, my daughter, and Brennan, my son, and married a girl from Red Rock, Kit Hall. And I built a house in Nipigon on property owned by my mother's parents, Corpy, and my mother, Ayla, and father, Arvo Ruoho. And did lots of fishing in the area and grew up on the farm that was now the golf course. Spent a lot of time out there in the summertime.
Okay, Arnold?
Right, my name is Arnold Ruoho, only son of Eno Ruoho. I have a sister, Arlene, who lives in Nipigon currently, Arlene Blakely. So I was born in 1941, Thunder Bay, Ontario. Went to school in Nipigon, public school and high school. Went to Lakehead University for a year in pre-pharmacy. Went to University of Toronto. Subsequently graduated from pharmacy in Toronto. Then attended graduate school, University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin. Did some postdoctoral work. Ended up at the University of Wisconsin on the faculty for about 45 years, roughly. Just retired about 5 or 6 years ago. Married to my wonderful wife sitting here, Denise, formerly of Anderson of Red Rock. We had 3 sons, David, eldest, Dan, and Jonathan, who was deceased about a year ago. Jonathan had cerebral palsy. What else do I need to add here?
Okay, well, that's introducing each of you. So now one of the interesting things, of course, is the Ruoho farm and the Ruoho dairy. So whichever one of you would like to talk about, I don't know how your grandparents started that or how they got here. Can you remember? Do you know, Donnie?
Well, Art and I have been talking about some of the early history. Sharon's has some of the information about how they arrived.
Yeah.
My grandparent, I know, I think you're saying it right, I know.
I know, huh?
And Gus.
Gusti.
Gusti Ruoho arrived separately. They didn't know each other when they left Finland. They met in Thunder Bay, married in Thunder Bay.
I've got the details of when
Yeah.
they arrived. Bapa, who we called our grandfather Gusti, arrived in April 1909 on the SS Virginian, and I'm emotional. She was Aino Sarima. She arrived in March 1913 on the SS Baltic.
They raised 3 sons. They lived on Stillwater Creek in a one-room shack. There's a log building, dirt floor. And in 1926, they started to brush out the farm, which is now the golf course, with the 3 boys.
Yeah, there's an interesting story here. Can I interrupt a
Yep,
minute?
yep.
So my information, and I'm not sure where I got this information, but I think it's in the family lore somewhere, that they had to find a location for what was eventually the dairy farm, but a farm. And the picture I have in my mind is, I think that my dad was about 2 years old. Then Arvo and Oli are older. I don't remember what their ages, 5 and 7, something like that. With my dad on my grandfather's shoulders, when looking around, sounds probably a little bit melodramatic perhaps, but I think the general idea was that they were finding an area in that region that would be suitable for clearing the land, etc. So I've always had this image in my mind, and I know my grandmother, who was really the strong matriarch of this family, she is famously recounting stories of clearing that land. It's sort of in our records here at home too, burning out stumps since they had no way of pulling them out, clearing the land. She was very proud of that. She said that to us many times. Remember that story. So I just insert that little bit of memory there.
But that's an important part of our history because they cleared all that land, even for the farm, which is now the golf course. We would not have a golf course if it hadn't been for the pioneer Ruohos, because today they would not be clearing all that property just to make a golf course. So that's a very vital part of Nipigon history.
Can I just insert this? This is sort of ironic in a way. Denise has been looking into the history of the Ruohos and of both sides of Gusti and Aino in Finland, and the Sarima family, going back to the 1600s, I think, is that right? 1600s, had they weren't called Sarima. The Finns are famous for changing their names all over the place, and trying to genealogy is sort of a trick here. But Denise found that in the Sarima family, going back quite a long distance, there were 2 brothers that divided a big swath of land, ran independent farms, and very large farms apparently. And I think that area is now a golf course in Finland.
Oh, very ironic.
It's an operating golf course.
Oh, very well. Okay, so Jim, what you grew up on the farm, out of the farm?
I grew up, my first 4 years were spent not on the farm per se, but on the land that what the farm was on. There's a road that goes right through the middle of the farm. The farm itself was a square mile of all the property that was owned, and there was a little cabin, a 2-room, maybe just 1 room, but just a little small divider between it, just off on top of the first rise of the road that went past the farmhouse, that it was known to us as Sharon's camp. And why that was, I am not certain, but the first 4 years of my life were spent in that vicinity, or in that camp. So I mean, it was home to me. And in 1948, we finally moved into Nipigon.
Right.
But
So that's interesting for the word Shalander to come up when you think that he had ties to Nipigon too, Shalander.
Yeah.
So interesting.
That's been a mystery to me too, Jim, to why
Yeah.
it was called Shalander's Camp. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, interesting. So where'd you grow up, Donnie?
In Nipigon, and it's actually the three houses that are built on 8th Street. They were built in the late 40s, early 50s, and I grew up in the house in the middle of those two, of the three houses. I was in the middle of the house. Spent our time playing on the lagoon banks and down at the riverbed where we were supposed to be restricted not to go, but that was our favorite playground. Built rafts on the lagoon and spent summers out at the farm, and that was always an interesting thing out there. Lots of stuff to get into and trouble to get into. Terrorize the livestock and ride the pigs. Remember that, Jim? Riding the pigs? Get on a pig's back, boy, they go pretty quick.
So what kind of animals did they have on the farm then? You had cows, of
Cows,
course.
and
there
Cows,
was cattle. There
pig-
was everything.
there
There
was
was
pigs,
cattle,
yeah,
pigs,
yeah,
Chickens?
chickens.
Yeah.
Chickens. Yeah, I
Horses.
can't remember how many cows.
Horses.
13?
Oh, there was more than
22.
that. There was
22?
Yeah, it was out of the
Yeah.
notes. There's 22 cows.
Wow.
Yeah, they started the dairy in 1926, and milk wasn't pasteurized yet then. 1929, January 1st, 1929, pasteurization became a law, and they had to heat the milk up to 142 degrees for half an hour and then cool it off again. And they started delivering milk in 1933. That was my grandfather. Gusty started delivering milk in Nipigon. And there was a competing dairy at the same time, Mata's Dairy. And this is from notes from my father, but there was a vet came to town to test the herd because cattle were one of the primary sources of spreading TB through the milk. So they tested the cattle for TB, and it ended up the Mata herd was decimated.
Oh.
And my grandfather lost one cow.
Wow.
So that's how they ended up being the single dairy in Nipigon.
So had your grandparents been in the dairy business before they came to Canada?
No.
Oh, so it was a brand new venture.
Well, it was, I don't know, this is sort of a natural thing, I guess, that you had the herd and you had to do something with it. So they milked it. You had all this extra milk. They had 22,
Wow.
cows. So I guess it was probably my grandmother who probably suggested. There was one little anecdote that I remember as being told that my grandfather used to smoke one time, and one time he was churning butter and was smoking and dropped ashes into the butter, and it raised the roof at the house.
So your Arvo delivered milk.
Yes.
Did either of the other brothers?
My father was the first one to deliver
deliver
milk.
milk.
I think my grandfather did, but they delivered also to Red Rock.
Horse and truck? Well,
Truck,
I don't
in
No,
the
no,
truck, yeah.
In the truck, yeah.
I think that prisoner of war camp might have been there at the time.
Yeah, I think they
Yeah.
delivered milk to there too.
Oh.
Yeah, actually the dairy ran until 1947, and then it shut down because they couldn't get enough milk to supply the demand.
Oh.
And in 1950, a dairy in Scriber shut down, and they were able to pick up that extra supply that was supplying the dairy in Scriber, and they started up again in 1950. That was with Eno and my dad, right, Arnold?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ole had gone on his own into contracting business, into the heavy equipment.
Here's my remembrances of the milk issues. Yeah, that's about what I remember, around 20 cows. That wasn't enough milk, and so when I got my driver's license, I spent time going around the local farmers to supplement the milk. And I remember Oliver Inget on the Thunder Bay Highway there was one source. Actually, I'm remembering down Mata's Road, Leo Bloom used to live down there. I'm not sure if it was his family farm or his farm, pick up milk there as well. and there are a couple of places outside of Red Rock. I'm trying to remember. It wasn't Haino's, but it was close by to the Haino farm there. And so we had this pickup truck, Chevy pickup, and sometimes as our relationship went along, Denise would join me, and we'd go around and pick up these milk cans, these large milk cans, and get a full load, take it back to the farm.
Yeah, Dad said they would pick up milk from Hotchkiss Farm, Broughton Farm, and Hanson Farm in Dory and
Yeah.
Hurkett.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to add that it spread as far as I was out there once or a few times too
Yeah,
to
milk
pick
used
up
to-
milk.
yeah.
And it wasn't always a lot of milk. It was just one or two barrel or milk cans fulls. And the milk cans were always rotated. They would always trade around.
I just remember the bottles being very popular once the dairy quit, right? And
Yeah.
and they still are. It's one of the
Yeah.
collector items for this
It-
area.
It was it's sad, in case that we should have collected a lot
Arnold
of
knows where they're
things.
buried.
I don't
So
think
many of them were just
I don't think
smashed.
there's any
And
more,
they're-
but I hauled with that same truck huge numbers of bottles behind the old farm there at the base of that hill that was behind the barn. And I have no idea where they are anymore, but imagine if the trove if you could find them.
Yeah.
So there was a spot on the road on that main road to the left, and I remember going there once, and there was hundreds of them smashed.
yeah,
Um,
that was up
just up
by
that little-
Shalander's camp. That's
Oh, that's where it
my
was.
first
Okay.
home where I was.
Yeah, I just remember thinking, "Oh my goodness, all these good bottles all smashed up." But
Well, there was a lot of them held, taken also and dumped onto the pipeline, which is just at the dip of
Yeah.
the highway that came down from the highway, from Suicide Hill at
Yeah.
the time, and then off to the left. There was a lot of them dumped there because I was involved in dumping them.
never thinking they
Never
were a
thinking.
valuable
They'd be-
item.
Yeah.
But the thing is that they were not all Rojo milk
Right.
bottles. They were just,
Right.
but a lot of them were. And
Right. Huh?
Another thing they did with the livestock is this is from my father's notes again, but the highway went through to Thunder Bay in 1924, and the hill at Suicide Hill was so steep that cars couldn't get up the hill. So my grandfather had a team of 2 horses, and he'd pull vehicles up that hill for $2 a pull. And I'm thinking, in those days, that you'd work for a week for $5. So we're thinking that's where the estate got going.
Okay. So that lots of history then to do with the farm and the dairy.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll wind up the first segment
Okay.
and then we'll talk again. Okay, so we're just going to continue and change direction now with the Rojos and maybe a little bit of the other history, and Jim's going to give us some on his dad.
well, my father sort of left the farm, and I guess it was close to 1950, but maybe a little before. But he started a contracting business. He owned tractors and trucks and whatever else he could get a hold of and use. But he did a lot of the work around town. He dug a lot of basements and did a lot of the road work, and he basically dug, I would think, the largest percentage of the basements in Green Mantle area.
Mm-hmm.
He was also sort of responsible for digging or making the breakwater that went to Pie Island.
Yeah. Can I interrupt that, Jim? In my view, Ole, my uncle Ole, probably dug a lot of sewers in
Oh, for
Nipigon
sure.
and extended the Nipigon Township over towards Lake Helen. Even I think they needed a lot of sewer work there. So that was a major element. You're talking about basements, etc. Absolutely true. But I think that Nipigon was Ole was heavily active in Nipigon. And that breakwater that you're referring to, I'm not sure. Has anything been done to that breakwater?
Yeah, they've taken it down.
Okay, because Ole was responsible for building that breakwater to prevent silt coming into the marina there, I think mainly. And I was weighing the trucks. My job there was to weigh the trucks when they came over to dump their rock on that breakwater as it was being built. So that was a fond memory.
Wow.
Just another thing, Ole had built the first footings for the pipeline station at Orient Bay in 1957. And the very first station is not there anymore. It's been all updated. But my father ended up retiring, working from Trans-Canada Pipelines from that very station.
Wow.
But he also did the second section of the footings
Right.
too. So
Yeah.
He had a lot. I
Yeah.
just remember everybody remembers him with equipment for sure.
Yeah.
And my grandmother Ruoho, she was very visionary, and she had all the property at 9th Street. She owned 9th Street and a bit of McCurdy. And when they moved from the farm to Nipigon, Ole put the services in 9th Street so they could put their house up on the top of 9th Street. Ran the water and sewer up that.
So did the three brothers build the houses together, or
No.
did one of them build them? Or?
no, my grandfather had built them for them,
They were built, yeah.
and they went up the hill. First was my father's, Ole's, then was Arvo's, and then it was Ano's. And each of the sons, each also got another parcel of land to do with what as they wanted. And then at later years, what was left and not sold out, all the grandchildren, the boys, the male grandchildren, got a piece of property off that.
Oh wow! You're right, visionary. Eh?
Yeah, she was very.
Wow. Yeah.
I believe these are all log houses.
Cedar logs.
Cedar logs, yeah.
Log houses, and just a story that I always think about when I think about those houses and the logs, including that garage, by the way, that is still on the back lane there between the 9th Street. That garage is Ole's garage, as we called it, and it's still standing. So these cedar logs were obtained from a cedar swamp on the farm, right at the base of the mountain there. They were hauled out of there and sort of gathered on the edge of the field. And then 2 times, I remember 2 different years, a sawmill crew came in there and sawed those logs up into cedar timbers. It was quite an operation, I remember.
Wow. So that's interesting that how those houses have evolved then from the log houses, which is quite a few at Nipigon that have siding. And of course everybody in town, even when I moved here, those 3 Ruoho houses all look the same and all built the same. Were they all the same inside?
Yes.
Yep, same layout.
And there's a fourth house, one on Hudson Street, that was also built by my grandfather, right across from the school. Right, it was
looks
just
the
up
same.
Same shape.
Used to be
I
the
guess.
Hudson Bay house. The
Right.
manager of the Hudson Bay used to live in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
He actually built that house himself.
Okay.
But in our uncle, my mother's brother, lived in that house at one
Right.
time
Oh.
on
And-
Hudson Street.
Right.
And
Now
my grandfather Ruoho also built used to be Pink Store, Manila Store. That house is also built by him
okay.
way back in.
Well, in other interviews we did, we found out a lot of Finnish people that came ended up doing a lot of carpentry work.
Mhm.
That must have been a heritage thing for
Yeah.
Finlanders. I
Could
don't
be,
know,
yeah.
but they
Yeah,
were
but-
well known for their carpentry skills.
Yes, my other grandfather, my mother's father, definitely was very good woodworker, but I don't think Papa Ruoho was particularly. Not fine work.
Well, he built his own house, the
Yes,
one on the
but-
farm.
yeah.
He mixed the basement from concrete. My dad said he did it in a trough on the ground. It took him a week to pour the cement for the basement by himself.
That's a farmhouse?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was another prideful thing for Momo Ruoho. I remember that they had a house and a basement, and it actually had a furnace.
A furnace in it, yeah. Gravity heat furnace in the basement, yeah. Or
Right.
octopus, the old octopus furnace.
Right, right.
I want to pose a question here because it's always been a little bit confusing to me. The house in Nipigon that Momo and Baba had, this house, I believe, was a Cameron Falls house.
No,
Pine Portage.
Pine Portage.
Pine Portage, right.
When Pine Portage shut down, yeah.
Yeah, and they were selling houses in Pine Portage. So they moved it from there,
Yeah.
right?
And it just came back as a thing. And my dad scooped out the underneath it to put in the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and they built a sauna down there. I spent a lot of saunas down there.
Yeah. We'd all go there for sauna, and if you went for a sauna, you get a pop. Nipigon Bottling Works pop after your sauna.
Right. We'll talk a little bit about my dad. My dad, when the farm and the dairy was over, this was 1957, he purchased a bowling alley in Thunder Bay, Thunder Bay Bowlodrome, and spent quite a bit of time developing the youth bowling leagues in Thunder Bay. I think he was very insightful in the sense that he saw that the future of bowling and any sport, I guess in general, was to get young people involved. And I think that the youth leagues that developed there in Fort William at the time, I think was correct. And so he worked pretty hard at that.
He was a bowler himself, right?
He wasn't a bowler.
No.
Oh, he wasn't a bowler.
No.
He became,
Well, I was thinking somebody was a bowler. Oh, he
Well,
was.
Jim's mom.
My mother was a bowler.
Yeah,
and
but,
my mother was a bowler. Yeah.
okay, the women were, but not the men.
It's the Superior Bowlodrome now, Arnold. I think it was Superior when your dad had it
No,
as well.
It was he bought it from. It was Gibson's when he bought it.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, it's still going
Yeah.
strong.
Is it?
The irony is that that was a very active business when he bought it. It's a 5-pin bowling. I don't know if it still is or not.
Yeah.
But soon after he bought it, about 3 of these 10-pin bowlodromes came in.
Yeah.
Really impacted his business, I guess.
Yeah.
Right, right. So, anything else you remember about? Okay, just share with us about the. It's the loom that you have here, isn't it?
Yes, that's my mother's father built that
Made it, yeah.
for his wife, for my grandmother, and to build these make these fin mats that they use used material. They cut up strips of used material and put them together to make mats, which are all over the place
All
here.
over,
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yes.
Even me, I have those too.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to buy those kind of
Yeah,
mats
yeah.
because they wear forever.
Yes, yeah.
Wear forever.
And it's recycling, isn't it? It's,
Right,
Yeah.
recycling back in those days. But
Yeah.
I just know I've seen that loom there, and you brought your grandkids before
Yes.
to come
Yeah.
and see the loom. Right, right. Yeah. Anything else, Donnie? You got all those notes there.
Well, just there's lots of stuff to talk about. Just some of the old days. My dad was talking about some of the prices of stuff. A quart of milk was 5 cents. They could buy a 100-pound sack of flour or sugar for $1. And these sacks, after they were emptied, they sewed them together and made their bed sheets. And apparently that was common, and most people did that. They saved the linen and made bed sheets.
So, when did your dad when did the dairy, they finally stopped? It went to Palm after.
Yeah,
Yes.
Palm bought them
64, I think it was.
Oh.
60.
Because I'm
60.
thinking I still had delivery at my house for a long
60.
time.
Yeah, that was. I never got to play baseball or hockey or anything like that because I was on the milk truck. It was not by choice.
I was
Yeah, that was. It was just something. It was okay.
So did your dad deliver for Palm then?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just remember him coming to our house, and I'm thinking it was not Ruoho then; it was
Yeah.
Palm. Okay.
And I think the story goes around that the people didn't have to leave a note. Dad would go in and check the fridge
Well, I was
and
just
leave
thinking
you what you needed.
Right, I was trying to remember how we paid for our milk, but I can't remember. Yeah, I think we bought tickets.
Tickets, yeah, they were
coupons
tickets.
or something at one
You
time.
buy a book of tickets and just leave the empties out, and the tickets will be sitting there, so you know what to leave.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Lots of faith in those days. Right, right.
also delivered milk when it was Ruoho Dairy with my dad, and as I think already mentioned, my dad would be at the farm for a month. I think it was a few weeks, washing the bottles that came when they came back to the farm, and Arvo would be delivering, and then it would be switched on a regular basis so that one delivered milk, one washed the bottles, and Baba Ruoho was helping at that time at the farm as well. I want to make a broad statement, I guess, about the role that I see the Ruoho family in Nipigon. I think so first of all, the Ruoho family really joined together the Corpy family, as Sharon did, And the Kuzisto family, my mother's maiden
That's who
name,
was the bowler.
Kuzisto, and those other two families joined in with the Ruoho family, so it broadened the Ruoho family in Nipigon. And also there were a lot of social activities. I know that Agnes and Ayla and my mother Toyney were active at the Royal Purple in Nipigon.
Right.
I think my dad and Arva were Elks, so they were socially active as well.
Right, very much a part of Nipigon, that's
Yes,
for sure.
yes.
Right, and that's who was the bowler, the Kuzisto side, right? Wasn't one of them a bowler?
Well, and certainly Agnes was Jim's mom. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my mother was a curler, and
Yeah.
So was Toyney.
yeah, we,
And Arvi Kuzisto, Baba Kuzisto.
Was a curler.
so they
And
started
a bowler.
Yeah, they started us off in curling. When I came back from college in 1972, that the next year, 73, that curling club's ice plant had rotted out, and it wasn't going to run. And I kind of got railroaded by the older members of the club to take the presidency. No idea what I was going into, but anyways, first part of the job was to get the plant up and running, and I got Mel Hagan in there from the Red Rock, pipe fitter. He measured everything up and got it all done in the shop. In the mill, they thought they were building shower headers for the washers in the pulp mill. And Jimmy Hendrickson welded it all in, and we were up and running, and it was just kept it going from there.
When the curling rink was on the first,
Yeah,
first street.
On the old, that's the old.
The old club, yeah.
Yeah.
George O'Neill
Three
was
sheets.
my vice, and Mrs. Summerly was in there as well, and Cookie and Alfie, and kept it going. It's still
Right.
going.
Right, still going,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure.
With a new lease on life again.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's lots of little things. What else have you got there? Some other trivia there, Donnie?
Well, just
I was just going to say, though, was your families involved in the building of the Lutheran Church?
Yes.
yeah, my mother was
yes.
one of the charter members.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and
We were all there.
Yeah.
I was a member too.
Yeah.
confirmed, and the Lutheran
Okay.
Church is still hanging in there.
Right,
It's like all the other churches in town right now. Well, I shouldn't say it that way broadly, but Christianity overall is taking a pretty heavy hit
right.
for membership and attendance, and
But
we're
those
not
were the
exempt.
days when everybody got together to help
Yes,
build something,
yes,
and I
yes.
figured that your family would be
Yes.
part of the
Yeah.
building
Yeah,
of
they
the
were, yeah.
Lutheran Church.
And I've been on the board for 25 years with
Right.
that church. So it's hard to let it go because of our family ties in it, and all the effort that was put in by our ancestors so it's just hard to let go.
Yeah. Okay, what else have you got there? I interrupted you.
Oh, just the bush camps. My grandfather Corpy was a woodcutter. He was famed in the bush for his sisu, they call it. His determination, his work ethic was outstanding. He'd leave and he'd spend 3 months of a winter in the bush camps. That was the standard way they do it. There was a bush camp at Pike Lake. There was a bush camp up at Stillwater Lake. The Pike Lake one, he'd walk out on Monday and come back home on Fridays. What else do we have? We got lots of different things. Oh, the beer parlors opened in 1935. My dad said they used to have a tradition at finished weddings that they'd carry the bride and the groom around on their shoulders at a wedding. And then he said once the beer parlor got going, and they stopped doing that tradition. No more carrying people around. Horse pulling competitions down at Jack Thompson's property down by the Nipigon River. It used to be a big social dance floor down there, and horses used to come in from Dorian,
Oh, I never-
and that was a big deal down there. Skiing, skiing was a big deal around here. The sauna, lots of outdoor saunas. The old saunas used to have a fire pit in the middle with a mound of rocks around it. They'd heat up the rocks, put the fire out. Because the smoke, there was no chimney. The smoke would just go through a hole in the ceiling, and then they'd go in and wash in there.
And the reason for that was when they at the farm anyway, that they had it so that it would, when they built the fire in the sauna, it would be out full of smoke, and they would smoke their meat in there before you went in. When the smoke cleared, then they took the meat out, and you had your sauna.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, lots of different things. The sauna was. My dad was saying that I guess they're everywhere, but their farmhouse was infested with bed bugs. So to get rid of it, in the wintertime they turned the heat off, went and lived in the sauna for 2 weeks. So the house froze, and that was the end of the bugs. They were all gone. But a family of 5 living in a sauna for 2 weeks. That was probably 12 feet by 16 feet at the most.
Well, it wasn't much smaller than where I was living at the beginning.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot of things that we would think would be impossible to do nowadays. Like they did as regular stuff.
One thing about going back into milk with my grandfather, he made only chocolate milk in the summertime, but it was the best chocolate milk I can remember ever tasting when he had it. And he only sold it for a couple of months every year.
Oh.
It was really something. I don't know.
He used to keep it cool in the creek water.
Yeah.
There's a creek there. He put it in a creek to keep it cool. Well, we knew where the stash was.
I also would like to inject this general comment that I made about the joining of families again. Amanda Ruoho Nen, I think, Monty. I don't know if you remember Monty. Anybody?
Amanda Mackey, yeah.
She was married to John Mackey eventually. Yeah, she married Haino, but she was my grandfather Ruoho's sister.
She was my godmother.
Was she?
Yeah.
Pardon me?
She was my godmother.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, she was like a second grandmother to everyone.
Yeah, Mumutati.
Mumutati, yeah.
Mumutati,
Yeah.
They lived, and so John Mackey had this farm that I often visited because there was a joining of the Ruoho family with the McPhails. And the Simey McPhail was a young woman in Nipigon with hanging around with the boys, and I think there was a very tight bond there. And Simey then married Don McPhail and raised a family around Renfrew, Ontario, Haley Station, that area. So that was another joining of the Ruoho family with yet again another family.
Okay, so we've run out of time for this segment. And if you want to, we could continue if there's had any more. Okay.
So it was about 160 acres, I think, that they homesteaded, and I think they then were able to obtain another 160 acres. So that road that's still present that goes towards the golf course or through the golf course property has property of the farm on both sides of that road. Schlander's camp was actually on the opposite side of the road, as Jim just mentioned, from the farm property per se. So that area was quite large. I think the second property we understand here, looking at the genealogy or the background, was purchased from a Russian. And in fact, Baba Ruoho tried to get to the U.S. to have his ulcer treated. This was way back in 1920 or something. They wouldn't let him into the U.S. because he said he was Russian. And I think the reason for that was that the time that most of the exiting occurred, both Baba and Mumu from Finland and others, there was a sort of historically a time of Russification, as they called it, of Finland. It was heavily influenced by politics, Russian politics, and Finland's had a long history of either being Swedish or variously influenced by Russia. So they bought that second property from a Russian. That's what our information is, and you will remember. Everybody will remember the wonderful times, I think, that were on the farm during haymaking time. I remember Suckle Corpy, Sharon.
Yes.
Big man, and he was so powerful, and so we getting the hay onto the wagon there, and getting the hay into the loft, and Suckle would often be handling the big fork that brought the big hay from
Into the barn. Yeah.
from the containers into the barn, and this was a wonderful time on the farm. It was as wonderful as the winters were ugly.
Yeah.
I think in all of our memories, in my memory at least, the farm was a special place.
Well, hey Arnold, that farm was a square mile, the property.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So so I just want to clarify now, the road that everybody takes, the golf course road, that's, you actually had property on both sides of it. So
Yeah.
when they built the golf course, did they own the other side as well?
They had option to purchase it,
Okay.
but I inherited that.
So that's
Okay.
yours.
So you have one side and the golf course
No,
has-
I do. I sold it to Arlene's husband, Jerry.
Oh, right.
So
Oh,
Jerry
that's right.
owns it.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't realize there was property on. So that's why a lot of those bottles were buried on
thrown
that
on that
other
side,
side because
exactly.
that was part of the.
Well, when they took the garage apart that was there, right where the clubhouse is now, basically, that they took all the stuff that was in that garage and they went and dumped it right there
on
in
the
there.
other side. Okay.
And another thing, we were mentioning about all these 6x6 cedar logs. There must have been 1,000 of them left there when they sold the place, and it was all gone. They just helped themselves
Yeah.
to
All
there was
the way up to
great-
Bonga Lake.
there were
Wow.
great big bundles of them. I mean, they were really stacked up, right up by, right on the golf course, on the on top of the hill there, where the
Right.
one of the tee boxes are,
Yeah, right
It was-
across from,
right across from Shalander's camp there. That's where it was.
Okay. So were blueberries out there when
Oh,
you were?
oh, yeah,
Because
yeah.
I remember picking blueberries.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Fields
they,
behind,
very
yeah.
plentiful. I remember when I was a teenager, I guess, or close to it anyway. That my first bicycle was made by selling blueberries. That time, 11-quart basket you made $2.50 for it.
right.
Yeah, I
And
just-
so with that money I collected, I had enough to get a bicycle.
right.
One of our favorite blueberry stories, Denise and I, when we were first dating, there was some information that towards Jellicoe, the blueberries were just all over the place. So Mumu and Baba Rojo and Denise and I went with them one day blueberry picking in that Jellicoe area, and sure enough, they were blue. I mean, it was just amazing. And because it's amazing, if you put a fin into a blueberry field, a container will be filled before you leave. And when we left, we had our hats full, our baskets full, hubcaps full. Denise got a fit, and Momo Rojo said, "Oh no, we're not going yet. We're not going yet."
Yeah.
So Denise got a flavor of what it was going to be like.
Right. Oh, well, blueberries were certainly a part of that area, I remember. Right.
I just remember growing up, at the farm in the summertime, that the haymaking was the big deal. And at 7 years old, I was driving the tractor that was pulling it's a ladder that lifted the hay off the ground and put it onto the trailer or whatever, the rack behind the tractor. My job was to drive that tractor,
Oh, wow.
but it was first gear only.
Did you help with haymaking, Sharon?
Well, I'm sure I was out there, yes, and I can remember the fields. They had potato fields.
Oh,
Go and help with that as well.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
my fond memories are it was one child from each family. It was me, Jim, and Arlene. We were very similar age, and we used to spend time running around the fields, chasing the cows, cooking, having fires on the rocks, and cooking potatoes.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, we were like the Three Musketeers.
Yeah,
at
we
one
were
time.
always together.
Always
Yeah.
together.
Yeah,
Okay.
the barn was full of hay. That was our gymnasium. We used to jump off the upper levels into the hay piles, and it used to be good fun. Yeah.
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 Well, I started helping with the haying businesses. At first, we had all horse-drawn buggies, and so the kids, we were all up on top of the load, packing it down, jumping on top of it, just so they get more on it. And then later, it is that was my first job that I had. I actually got paid for it. All summer long, I made $14.
You got paid.
And I was, that was the first year that they had the tractor, and I was driving the tractor and pulling the hay load.
Did you get paid, Arnold?
No, I don't get paid. no. I just got praised like crazy.
well, you were the apple of their eye anyway, Arnold.
Unfortunately, or fortunately. So before we run out of time here, and before I forget, I wonder, I really would appreciate it if, Glenna, perhaps you could have a conversation with Arlene. I feel a bit uncomfortable at we haven't really had Arlene involved. And,
Okay.
I wonder if you might be able to visit Arlene or at least surprise Arlene as to what we've been doing here.
Yes, I could. I could talk to her.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
for
think
sure.
that she would feel included. I don't want to exclude her.
Right. No problem. I could talk to her for sure. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Okay. But when you're talking about farms, and now it brought back a memory. We interviewed Carlo
Oh, Jarvala.
Jarvala, and he told, was it his farm that had the potatoes?
Yeah.
And they provided the potatoes to the prisoners of war camp in Red Rock.
They also
plus
provided
to
milk.
the bush camp. So you did the milk and they did the
Well,
potatoes.
no,
which-
they also gave provided milk too.
Too, oh.
Just about every farm in Nipigon and along the Red Rock Road and a little bit beyond up towards Nyman, Ingots rather,
Right.
and up to Dorian, they all at one time
Yeah.
provided milk.
So that was good staples that were provided locally. Really was the produce from the farm plus
Well,
the
I said to Jim on the way down, most of the people were self-sufficient,
right,
really.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
One other point that I'd like to visit briefly is we had an ice house on the farm. Full of big blocks of ice from Lake Helen, and this was quite an adventure. And there's some pictures of trucks getting stalled in the ice there, and or going through the ice. But I remember how dangerous it was. I mean, the ice on Lake Helen at that time, I don't think this year, but it was about 4 feet thick. And
Big
when they were
saws.
when they were sawing off the blocks, the piece of ice would then start to float, of course, in the water, and you had big tongs to try to pull it onto the ice. But the ice was wet on the surface, and I remember thinking that somebody's going to go in. I don't think anybody did, but that was a big activity to get that ice into the ice house at the farm. Put a sawdust on it, and it lasted all summer. We used that ice for cooling the milk bottles and using it in the milk distribution.
Right. Okay, I'm going to wind it up then.
Okay.
People have been a fountain of information, much enjoyed.